Hi, I'm DJ Sixsmith. You're watching The Sit Down. Ruthie Lindsey here with us today. Brand new book. There I am. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Yeah, we were just saying I have the privilege of getting to stay home, and there have been really, as much as it's been like hard, there's been a lot of really sweet things. I get to go outside all the time, and yeah, I'm not someone anyone needs to worry about. I'm doing really well.
Yeah, you're really grateful for all the little things in life. And I mean, when I think about your story, there's all these different chapters to your life, and I'm sure you're grateful for a lot of different things. So you've talked a bunch about your life and your story, but what was it like writing this book?
A nightmare. So freaking hard. You when you're writing a memoir, you really kind of essentially are going back in and kind of re-traumatizing yourself. Like I had to re-go through my wreck, and I had to live in my bed again for 7 years, and I had to go through, finding out about the wire in my brainstem and burying my dad and going through my divorce. And so it was really, really painful and really hard. But in the same breath, it became this like invitation for me to do like the deepest healing work that I've ever done so far, which has been also so beautiful that I don't think I would have gone in so deeply if it wasn't such a nightmare. Like, it was so hard.
Was there one part of the story that was toughest to dive back into? I mean, because you mentioned a bunch of things there, and like you've persevered and you're inspiring to people, but like that's a ton of crap that you had to go through in that stretch.
Probably burying my dad, because we had found out about the wire in my brain literally weeks before he passed away, and I
Wow.
had to jump into, you know, I felt like this ticking time bomb. So we had to go in and figure out like where I was going to do the surgery, and all these doctors were pursuing me, and they all had different ideas on how to do the surgery because no one had ever done it before. And so I didn't have a chance to really, and I was very disassociated just because of trauma. So I really wasn't able to stop and slow down and just mourn, because it was just kind of like you had to jump into action mode. And so because our brains are so wild and amazing and they don't know time, like when you're telling the story, your limbic brain doesn't know that it's not happening right now. So for me, it was almost like the fullest extent that I'd gotten to really mourn his passing while writing the book. It was, even reading it back in the audio, I was just like, like just bawling because, it was a massive loss.
Mm. Well, I'm glad that you had that time, that space to process that and heal from it and learn from it. And I think that's a really important part in all of this. But before we get more into that, why don't you take me back before the wreck, before the accident? What was life looking like for you? And just describe where you're at that point.
Yeah, so I grew up on a farm in South Louisiana. Two older brothers that I knew of. I write about finding out about a new brother at the end of the book. Life felt pretty simple and sweet. I mean, and I write about this in the book too. Like I grew up in a very historic South Louisiana town that has a lot of antebellum homes and a lot of plantations. And I spent the night at plantations all the time. Not even, when that's your norm, you think that's totally normal. Um, and beautiful, precious people, but there was still kind of a dark underbelly. Like my dances were segregated, and there was a lot of, just stuff that it feels normal to you until you're like, wait a minute, this is crazy. But yeah, I had a lot of friends. I thought life was just kind of great. I thought everyone's life was kind of great. I was pretty shallow, and as a teenager, I was just a kid. I thought everything was going to turn out exactly the way I thought it would. And I had just kind of, my own little privileged, isolated world. And yeah, life turns out real differently than we dream up, but it's exactly as it should be.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a great point that you make, because sometimes we wonder, like, why is this happening? What is the plan here? But ultimately, I'm a believer in everything happens for a reason. And you know what? Your story is a testament to that. So when you think about your road, like you've pushed your mind, your body, your spirit to its ultimate limit. Like, when did you realize how tough you were throughout this entire process?
Gosh, well, I I get to remind myself of that. I mean, I think, we have these limiting stories that want to tell us,
Mhm.
really limiting stories. And so I get to have the privilege of like going back in and be like, oh, you are so strong and you are so resilient. But I was very defined by my pain story for a very, very long time. I was completely identified by it. And I thought that's who I was. I thought I was my pain. And I think we teach people how to see us. So everyone else thought I was my pain. If I saw anyone, they'd be like, how are you? How are you feeling? And I found almost comfort in that because it was like, I, it justified in my sweet little sick brain at the time, living in my bed, not showing up as a partner, not working, not
Mhm.
being a sister, friend. And then as I started shifting, I weaned myself off of 7 years of heavy narcotics.
Mm.
I think so often you're like, I could never, like, I'll have people say, I could never go through something like that. I could never. And I'm like, well, yeah, you could.
Yeah.
You don't think you can handle or survive, but we are so strong and we are so resilient. And I keep getting to learn that about myself because I still will have these limiting ideas of what I'm capable of and what out of fear, or out of, lack or these stories. And then I'm like, wow, what a BS story. Like, we are so much stronger and so much more resilient than we ever could have dreamed of. Like, I wouldn't have imagined 90% of this for my life, but
Mhm.
I wouldn't change one thing because I feel like all the things that happened ended up becoming these invitations for me to like come home to myself and to heal and to unlearn these stories that I was told. Like, I thought I was broken. I thought
Mhm.
my body hated me. And, I thought all of my value and all my worth was in things outside of me, and getting to remember my inherent value and worth, and that this healing was for me and this love was for me and for every other human. That's been the sweetest thing, of remembering what was so right with me and not what was wrong with me. And that our bodies and our minds and our spirits, like, we were created to heal. And so that has been, yeah, like, I feel really proud of myself. And I've like fallen in love with that girl
Mhm.
that was such a nightmare that lived in her bed and had a nervous breakdown. And because that was a part of the journey to get me to this place. And I feel like I get to be who I am today, not despite my pain, but because of it. It like helped create the human that I get to be today, a more wholehearted, awakened, hopefully more present, more enlightened version of myself.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it. And, the fact that you found value in yourself throughout this is really important. And, a big part of the story too is the chronic pain, and not only what you're dealing with physically, but mentally. So when did all that really begin? Like, cause you get in the accident, you're bedridden, and then how much longer after does the whole chronic pain thing really dominate your life?
So after my wreck, I was super lucky. I mean, they used wire in my spinal cord
Mhm.
fusion, and that's just what they did back then. And I went back to like normal life. I mean, I was very disassociated. I would talk about the wreck and what happened in third person. Like, I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories.
Yeah.
And it just felt like a good story that I felt very detached from. I'm like, I had a 5% chance to live and a 1% chance to walk, and an ambulance hit me and saved my life, and it just felt
So
like a
it
cool
sounds like
story.
it was kind of like an out of body experience as you're telling your story.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, and I would always say it was way harder on my family and friends. Like, I was on life support. I just didn't remember a
Right.
lot, but your body does, the body, like one of my favorite books, The Body Keeps the Score. I didn't understand any of this at the time, of course. So I kind of went back to normal life. And, if I dance too much, I get sore, but that's about it. I definitely like stuffed all of those feelings and all those emotions. And after college, I moved to Nashville and met my first boyfriend, and we were literally married 10 months later.
Wow.